My so-called mate's neck snapped with a sickening crunch. His lifeless body splashed onto the bloody bathroom tile. The apex alpha of the city casually wiped my mate's blood from his claws. Then his glowing golden eyes locked onto me. I am just a mob cleaner. I am supposed to cower. I am supposed to beg. Instead, I gripped my wet, heavy sponge. I threw the bleach-soaked rag directly into the billionaire monster's face. "Wipe my debt," I whispered. Chapter 1. Rain beat furiously against the frosted bathroom window. Inside the slaughterhouse apartment, the air tasted like copper. Industrial ammonia coated the back of Harper's throat. She knelt on cracked tile. Her raw fingers squeezed a coarse sponge. She stared at the black garbage bag lying in the blood. It twitched. Harper stopped breathing. Trent paced behind her. His boots splashed in a puddle of pink water. He kicked a broken chair. Wood scraped against linoleum. "Shut up and scrub." "A mop." His voice rasped. "I'm calling this in for the bounty." Harper stared at the plastic. A child hid inside. She found the boy tucked deep inside the closet 20 minutes ago. Now Trent wanted to sell him. She survived 3 years under a syndicate loan by keeping her head down. You survive the alleys by playing blind. You save yourself. A tiny whimper escaped the plastic. It cut through the room. Harper dropped her sponge. She grabbed the steel pipe wrench resting on the sink. The freezing metal anchored her. Her knuckles turned white. "Don't touch him, Trent." She raised the wrench. Trent stopped. His yellow eyes flared. He laughed loudly. "You think you can stop me? You're a cleaner. You're nothing." He lunged for the bag. Claws slipped from his fingernails. The oak door exploded inward. Wood splintered into dust. Metal hinges shrieked. The apartment went completely silent. Plaster dust drifted slowly onto the bloody tile. Harper's ears rang loudly. The temperature plummeted. A shadow stepped through the ruined frame. He wore a bespoke suit. It defied the filth of the room. Golden eyes pierced the gloom. This was the apex alpha, Roman Thorn. Trent scrambled backward. He hit the wall hard. "Wait! I have the kid! I was holding him for you." Roman took a single step. The floorboards groaned under his boot. Harper clutched the iron wrench tight. She refused to die on the floor. The monster turned his head. How his predator gaze locked onto her face.
Beyond the broken door, sirens wailed in the distant rain. Inside the ruined bathroom, the air reeked of cheap beer and sheer panic. Roman Thorn stared at the cowering wolf. Trent pressed his spine against the peeling wallpaper. Roman's gaze snapped to the black bag. A frantic heartbeat pulsed against the plastic. His nephew lived. Relief struck him like a physical blow. Then, feral rage ignited his blood. Traitors raided his safe house. Mercenaries stole his blood. "Alpha, please." I found him," Trent begged. Roman moved. He crossed the room in a dark blur. He gripped Trent's throat. He lifted the traitor off the wet floor. 3 years ago, a trusted lieutenant sold his shipping routes to a rival cartel. Roman learned a cold truth in the aftermath of that ambush. Mercy spreads like a disease. You cut the rot out immediately. Roman closed his fist. Bone snapped loudly. The sound echoed off the tile. He dropped the lifeless body. It splashed into the pink water. Roman turned. He looked at the syndicate cleaner. She knelt near the dirty tub. Grime coated her pale face. She looked like fragile glass. A low growl rattled his ribcage. He waited for her to scream. He waited for the begging. She stood up. She gripped a plumbing tool. Her chest heaved. Terror widened her dark eyes, but she did not break his stare. She swung her arm. A wet rag sailed through the air. It smacked directly across Roman's face. Burning bleach seeped into his left eye. He blinked. Complete stillness claimed the room. No one struck the alpha. My debt is wiped clean. Her voice held a reckless edge. You wipe my mob debt. You get me a forged Tier 1 passport. Tonight. Or I swear to God, I will take this wrench and smash that bag myself. Roman wiped the chemical from his skin. The bleach burned. He ignored it. He stared at the girl. She did not look at the exit. She planted her boots firmly beside the hostage. She threatened an alpha with a rusty pipe wrench. A dangerous fascination ignited in his chest. He saw a fierce equal rising from the filth. Roman tilted his head. A slow smirk curved his lips. Get your coat.
Miles away from the blood-soaked garage, the penthouse felt like a sterile tomb. Cold moonlight poured across white marble floors. The faint, bitter scent of drying blood clung to Harper's clothes. It mixed with the sharp smell of expensive cedar wood. She stood frozen in the center of the massive room. Far below the floor-to-ceiling glass, city lights glittered like broken glass. Roman Thorn stood by the window. He watched the dark skyline. He did not speak. The silence pressed against her ribs. Years ago, her father stood in a room just like this. He begged a syndicate boss for time. She remembered the dull thud of his knees hitting hardwood. She remembered the sour sweat of his terror. She survived the blood of her past. She survived the bleach of her present. She would survive this predator. Harper locked her trembling knees. She kept her hands open and visible at her sides. Showing weakness to a wolf invited teeth. Roman turned. The golden fire in his eyes was gone. Cold, human brown replaced it. He crossed the marble floor. His boots made no sound. He stopped behind a massive mahogany desk. He picked up a leather-bound ledger. Come here. His voice vibrated through the floorboards. Harper forced her boots to move. She crossed the vast room. She stopped inches from the dark wood. Roman slid a crisp white document across the desk. It looked ordinary. It looked like a standard contract. It was a leash. Sign it. He tossed a silver pen onto the paper. Asset Protection Protocol. You are classified as collateral. Harper stared at the black ink. I want my passport. I gave you the boy. We made a deal. Roman leaned forward. He closed the distance between them. Heat radiated from his chest. You made a mess. His whisper scraped against her ears. Trent had accomplices. My enforcers are hunting them. Until my nephew is safe, you belong to the syndicate. Absolute finality hardened his jaw. Harper picked up the cold silver pen. A forged passport was her only exit from this hell. She slashed her name across the bottom line. She kept her chin raised. Yielding meant losing her last scrap of humanity. Roman snatched the paper. He walked past her. He stopped at a steel elevator in the wall. He pressed his palm against a sleek glass panel. A red laser flashed. The heavy steel doors slid shut with a deafening boom. Mechanical locks slammed into place. The kitchen is stocked, Roman said. Do not try to leave. He turned his back. He disappeared down the dark hallway. Harper stood alone in the gilded cage. She stared at the locked elevator. Was he keeping her safe from the city? Or was he keeping her for himself?
The morning sun baked the city asphalt. Inside the armored SUV, the air conditioning hummed a low, freezing note. Roman sat in the back seat. Tinted windows blocked the glare. Harper sat rigid on the opposite leather bench. She smelled of cheap hotel soap and stubborn defiance. She had not spoken a word since the penthouse garage. Roman stared at the burner phone in his hand. He told himself this was business. She linked Trent to hidden suppliers. She knew the layout of the slaughterhouse. He needed her breathing. His wolf paced inside his skull. It obsessed over the frantic rhythm of her pulse. 3 years ago, he trusted a weak link. 20 loyal fighters died in a dockyard ambush. He hated the scent of human fear. It reeked of past failures. He ignored his port shipments. He ignored his billion-dollar empire. He only saw the fierce way she threw that bleach rag. The burner phone vibrated violently. A text from his security chief flashed on the screen. Vance's tactical unit is tracking your route. We have a mole. A massive black van slammed into the side of the SUV. Metal shrieked. The heavy vehicle pitched onto 2 wheels. Get down, Roman roared. Feral instinct hijacked his brain. Heavy machine gun fire shredded the morning quiet. Reinforced glass exploded inward. Shards rained down like deadly hail. Roman lunged across the wide seat. He threw his body over Harper. He pinned her to the floorboards. She gasped. A sharp intake of terror. He shoved her face into his tailored jacket. Burning cordite and hot engine oil choked the cramped space. He wrapped his massive arms around her shoulders. He became a human shield against the silver storm. A bullet tore through the shattered window. It ripped across Roman's broad shoulder. Hot, stinging pain sliced his flesh. A low snarl ripped from his throat. The sharp scent of his own blood filled the SUV. Harper opened her eyes. She stared up from beneath his chest. She saw the bright red stain spreading across his white shirt. The Apex Alpha was bleeding for a mob cleaner. The SUV slammed back onto 4 wheels. Tires screamed against pavement. The driver punched the gas. They tore away from the ambush. Smoke trailed behind them. Roman kept her pinned to the floorboards. Who tipped off the cops? Who knew they were moving the human today? He tightened his grip on her waist, his wolf rising to slaughter them all.
High above the smoking wreckage of the ambush, the penthouse bathroom was clinically bright. The thick glass doors clicked shut, sealing them inside the marble room. The air smelled of sharp ozone, ruined leather, and hot blood. Roman hit the white counter. He leaned his weight against the stone. Harper froze in the doorway. Crimson drops splattered across the pristine tile. Roman gripped the collar of his torn shirt. He ripped the expensive silk down his chest. A jagged shard of silver jutted deep inside his shoulder. Harper stepped forward. She grabbed the metal first aid box off the glass shelf. She did not call a syndicate doctor. Roman expressly forbade it. A pack leader cannot show weakness to his wolves. His life rested completely in her hands. Do it. His voice scraped like sandpaper against stone. She popped the metal latch. On the box, she pulled out surgical tweezers. She uncapped a plastic bottle of rubbing alcohol. She cleaned up hundreds of mob hits. She scrubbed brains off drywall. She scrubbed blood out of carpets. She scrubbed away the sins of violent men. She never tried to save a life. Harper tipped the plastic bottle. Clear liquid splashed directly over his open wound. He did not flinch. He did not blink. He just watched her face. Harper dug the steel tweezers into his torn flesh. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The silver burned him from the inside out. A wrong move would sever an artery. If she stopped now, the poison would stop his heart. She needed him breathing to forge her passport. She forced her hands to lock tight. She gripped the slick, bloody metal. She pulled hard. The bullet popped free with a wet squelch. It clattered into the porcelain sink. Harper shoved a thick white towel against the flowing wound. Her lungs burned for air. Her fingers cramped violently. The room fell perfectly still. She looked up. She expected to see feral rage. Instead, his dark eyes locked onto hers. He leaned his bleeding chest an inch closer to her face.
Inside the blinding white bathroom, the fiery burn of the silver finally receded. Blood stained the pristine marble counter. The only sound was the frantic, uneven rhythm of Harper's breathing. Roman looked down. Her calloused hands pressed a red towel against his chest. Her knuckles turned stark white. She smelled like harsh ammonia and stubborn courage. His inner wolf paced inside his skull. It did not roar with anger. It stalked with possessive obsession. She did not run away. She did not bury the sharp steel in his throat. Years ago, his fated mate smiled at him. Then she slid a poisoned blade between his ribs. She wanted his empire. She wanted his money. She wanted him dead. He survived the betrayal. He swore to never let another human touch his skin. Now, he leaned into Harper's warmth. Her touch anchored him. It pulled his mind out of the feral dark. A single drop of sweat rolled down her pale neck. Roman tracked the motion. He wanted to taste the salt. He wanted to claim every inch of her defiant soul. Roman lifted his arm. He wrapped his hot fingers around her bloody wrist. He did not crush her bones. He held her firmly in place. Her breath caught. Her pulse hammered against his thumb. It felt like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. She did not pull away. She was not a syndicate liability. She was his anchor. Roman released her wrist. He stood up straight. His tall frame cast a dark shadow over her. Pack your things," he ordered flatly. He reached out. He wrapped his bloody fingers firmly around the back of her neck.
Hours after the blood-soaked bathroom, the penthouse dining room felt like a sterile tomb. Stark yellow sunlight blasted through the floor-to-ceiling glass. The glare burned Harper's tired eyes. Roman Thorn sat at the far end of a massive mahogany table. He wore a crisp, tailored charcoal suit. Not a single drop of dirt or blood remained. He stared blankly at a glowing tablet. He did not look up. The harsh blast of the air conditioning chilled her skin. The rich smell of dark roasted coffee filled the room. It felt like a corporate freezer designed to freeze out the weak. When she was 10, a loan shark broke her father's ribs in their kitchen. Then he handed her crying mother a crisp $50 bill. Her mother took the dirty cash. She wiped her bruised face. She bought a hot dinner. Survival demands ugly sacrifices. Harper knew exactly how to swallow her pride. Harper locked her jaw. She walked across the cold marble floor. Her sneakers made zero sound. Roman picked up a thick manila envelope. He slid it across the polished wood. It stopped in front of her hands. "Your debt is erased," Roman stated flatly. His deep voice carried zero warmth. "The passport is inside. You have a private flight to Zurich, leaving at noon." Harper stared at the brown paper. Her fingers trembled. She didn't want to leave. The air between them thinned out. She wanted him to tell her to stay. She wanted him to acknowledge the raw connection they shared over the bloody sink. Roman adjusted a silver cufflink. "My driver is downstairs. Do not return to this city." He looked at her like a dirty floor waiting for a mop. Harper forced her spine straight. She snatched the envelope. She lifted her chin. She locked her shattered chest tight. She survived the worst monsters in the underground. This cold dismissal hit harder than a physical punch. A frantic security siren ripped through the penthouse. The shrieking noise shattered the quiet. Red emergency lights strobe flashed across the white ceiling. Harper flinched. The private flight vanished from her mind.
Beneath the moon, Roman's inner wolf claimed the brave cleaner as a mate. Now, under the harsh morning sun, he shoved her away. He protected his empire by cutting off his own flesh. The bond throbbed against his ribs. His beast snarled. It scratched at the back of his skull. It demanded he shred the Zurich passport to pieces. An alpha never lets his treasure walk away. The physical pain of the denial burned his veins. His sharp claws extended. They dented the underside of the mahogany table. Lethal enemies tracked his every move. Who fed Detective Vance the private security codes? Where did the stolen silver artillery go? The unanswered questions haunted his waking mind. The heavy steel elevator doors hissed open. A loud chime echoed over the blaring siren. A syndicate lieutenant stumbled into the dining room. Dark purple bruises and wet red blood covered his young face. He hit the reinforced glass wall hard. He slid down, leaving a thick crimson smear on the pristine window, when the sterile boardroom atmosphere vanished. Roman stood up. His heavy chair crashed onto the marble floor. The faint scent of Harper's cheap soap mixed with the bitter, coppery stench of fresh pack blood. "Report!" Roman roared. The guttural sound rattled the massive glass panes. The broken soldier raised a shaking hand. He pointed a bloody finger directly at Harper. Vance took the commercial port. He slaughtered the night guards. The lieutenant choked on his own blood. No, he doesn't want the shipping crates, Alpha. He wants the mop. He wants the girl. Or he burns the fleet to ash. The carefully constructed human mask shattered entirely. Years ago, a rival pack leader offered a peace treaty while hiding a silver dagger. Roman ripped out the liar's throat. He burned the fake treaty. He took the territory. He built his underground empire with pure ruthlessness. He protected it with cold violence. He ruled with absolute terror. A corrupt cop would not take what belonged to him. Roman turned his head slowly. He locked his gaze onto the fragile cleaner. She stood frozen by the table. She clutched her ticket to freedom against her chest. Roman reached out. He snatched the manila envelope from her trembling hands. He ripped the fake passport in half. "You aren't going anywhere," Roman growled. Brilliant, lethal gold flared in his dark eyes. He grabbed the back of her neck, pulling her firmly against his chest.
Miles away from the shattered penthouse, the underground obsidian club throbbed with a dark, violent rhythm. Deep bass vibrated straight through the floorboards. The air reeked of expensive orchids and burning cigars. Harper clutched a crystal flute. Her knuckles turned white. The thin silk of her red gown clung to her skin. Roman guided her through the shadowy room. He rested his broad palm against her bare spine. The heat from his touch scorched her flesh. She scanned the masked faces in the dark corners. Someone in this room sold out the shipping port. Someone wanted them dead. Years ago, she scrubbed the floor of a high society lounge. A drunken mobster kicked a burning cigar onto the carpet. He watched her crawl on her hands and knees to extinguish the cherry. She learned a hard lesson in that filth. Wealth only buys better hiding spots for monsters. Harper forced her chin up. She survived the blood of the slums. She survived the bleach of the crime scenes. She would survive the venom of this ballroom. A waiter with glowing eyes walked past. He carried a silver tray. The crowd parted around Roman like water. Pack leaders lowered their heads. Roman ruled the room without speaking a single word. The atmosphere shifted abruptly. The thick stench of sour envy flooded the dance floor. A scarred boss blocked their path to the lounge. Silver threads lined his suit. A brutal scar cut directly across his throat. He locked his yellow eyes onto Harper. "Roman," the scarred boss yelled over the thumping bass. "You brought the mop to a sit-down? Does she do the floors? Or just your lap?" Blood rushed to Harper's pale cheeks. The pulsing music faded into the background. The crowded room went completely silent. Glowing eyes turned toward the Apex Alpha. They waited to see if he would let another man insult his human property. Harper gripped the thin glass stem. She waited for the ultimate betrayal. Nor she expected Roman to push her away. The temperature plummeted to freezing. Roman slid his hand from her spine. He wrapped his hot fingers firmly around the back of her neck.
Inside the frozen silence of the ballroom, the insult hung like poison in the air. The sharp scent of cheap whiskey rolled off the rival boss. Sour arrogance choked the space between them. Roman stared blankly at the scarred man. His inner wolf did not howl. It went completely still. The beast stopped pacing. It locked onto its prey. 10 years ago, a street thug insulted his mother in a crowded market. Roman did not yell. He picked up a loose cobblestone. He crushed the man's skull into white powder. He learned the truth of absolute power at 16. True dominance is a quiet storm. It leaves 0 survivors behind. Roman felt the trembling heat of Harper's skin under his palm. She expected him to walk away. Roman reached out his right arm. He curled his fingers around the crystal tumbler in the rival's grip. He pulled the glass free. The slow movement confused the rival. The scarred boss blinked. Roman slammed the tumbler onto the marble bar. Glass exploded. Sharp shards rained across the stone. The noise cracked like a gunshot. Roman's hand shot forward. He locked his grip around the rival's wrist. He twisted the bone downward over the sharp marble edge. A loud snap echoed through the silent club. The boss hit the floor. He screamed in blinding agony. Tears tracked through the dirt on his cheeks. Roman kept his spine straight. He leaned over the crying man. "She is Syndicate untouchable," Roman whispered. His voice rattled the floorboards. "Breathe in her direction again. I will end your bloodline." Pack leaders backed away in unison. The stench of pure terror replaced the orchids. Roman released the broken wrist. He let the man collapse into the spilled whiskey. Roman pulled a silk square from his pocket. He wiped a single drop of blood from his thumb. He turned his golden eyes toward the crowd. Nobody dared to speak. She was his. A burner phone vibrated inside his jacket. The buzzing broke the deadly quiet. Roman pulled the plastic device free. The screen displayed a restricted number. His enhanced hearing picked up the arrogant breathing on the other end of the line. Detective Vance wanted a war. Roman pressed the phone to his ear and smiled.
Miles away from the violent glamour of the Obsidian Club, the 12th precinct felt like a concrete tomb. The steel door of the interrogation room slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Harper flinched in the hard plastic chair. A harsh, fluorescent bulb buzzed overhead. It sounded like a trapped wasp. The tiny room smelled of stale cigarettes, bitter coffee, and sour sweat. Detective Vance stood across from her. He tossed a manila folder onto the scratched metal table. It landed with a wet slap. The air in the room turned stale and thin. Harper stared at the glossy photos spilling across the metal. They showed dark alleys and bloody tile. Her own tired face stared back from grainy security footage. Who planted the hidden cameras? Why did the digital timestamps frame her for the slaughterhouse murders? Cold realization flooded her veins. Vance leaned over the table. The sharp stink of cheap cologne burned her nose. "You are going away for life." "Mop," Vance sneered. "Unless you sign this paper. Confess Roman Thorn kidnapped my nephew." A cold shiver tracked down her spine. Years ago, a street gang kicked in the door of her apartment. She called the police. She hid in a dark closet for 3 hours. She clutched a rusty kitchen knife. When the sirens finally arrived, the cops did not arrest the laughing gang members. The gang handed over rolls of dirty cash. The cops arrested her innocent landlord instead. She learned a brutal truth in that dark closet. A silver badge is just a convenient mask for monsters. Harper refused to look at the typed confession. She looked Vance in his empty eyes. She remembered the burning heat of Roman's broad palm on her spine. She remembered the calm, terrifying way he shattered crystal to protect her from a rival. "I don't know what you are talking about," she stated evenly. Her heart hammered a frantic beat against her ribs. Vance slammed his fist onto the table. You think he cares about you? You are the dirt he wipes off his boots. When the silver starts flying tonight, he will leave you to bleed. Harper understood true power now. She leaned forward in the plastic chair. She did not shake. She did not cry. She did not surrender. You aren't the law, Vance, she said smoothly. You are just a dead man in a cheap suit. A shrill fire alarm erupted through the concrete walls. The deafening noise shattered the interrogation. Red strobe lights flashed across the ceiling. They painted the small room the color of fresh blood. The real nightmare had arrived.
Outside the pulsing base of the Obsidian Club, the back alley was a dark, freezing wind tunnel. Oily rain slicked the cobblestones. The damp air smelled of spilled garbage and wet brick. It also carried the faint, fading scent of Harper's sweet soap. Roman Thorn stood perfectly still in the shadows. A low growl rattled his ribcage. Vance used a forgotten access tunnel to ambush her. The delicate scent trail ended abruptly at the wet asphalt. How did a human cop bypass the security grid? Who inside the pack handed over the blueprints? Blinding rage consumed his rational mind. When he was a pup, he watched a grizzly bear step into a steel trap. The bear did not cry. It did not wait for rescue. It chewed off its own leg to slaughter the cowardly hunter. He learned the nature of the beast that day. An apex predator will destroy itself to annihilate its enemy. Roman did not call his syndicate lawyers. He dropped his encrypted burner phone into a muddy puddle. He crushed the plastic under his leather boot. He ignored the political fallout. He ignored the shipping ports. He ignored the billions in his bank accounts. He gripped his silk tie. He ripped it from his neck. He threw his bespoke jacket onto the wet ground. The beast inside his skull tore the iron cage doors off their hinges. His bones ached with the promise of extreme violence. Sharp claws punched through the tips of his fingers. Alpha. A young guard sprinted out the back door of the club. The cops have her. They took her to the 12th precinct. They have tactical gear and silver rounds. It is a trap. Roman turned his head. His eyes burned like liquid hellfire in the dark alley. The calm human boss vanished completely. He smelled burning silver. He smelled bitter tear gas. He smelled the fresh blood waiting to spill. He would burn the corrupt city to ash to get her back. Roman took a heavy step out of the shadows. The hunt had begun. No one inside that precinct would survive the night. He cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing like breaking bone, outside the concrete walls of the 12th precinct. The city slept in cold ignorance. Inside the lobby, humanity burned away into white ash. The reinforced glass doors of the precinct shattered. Millions of glass diamonds rained across the tile. A blinding wave of tear gas flooded the bullpen. The air tasted like bitter poison and metallic fear. A dozen tactical officers stood frozen in the white smoke. Their black boots slipped on the polished floor. Roman did not slow his charge. He did not just shift. He let the beast rip its way out of his human skin. His tailored silk shirt shredded into ribbons. Broad shoulders expanded with a sickening crack of bone. Midnight black fur erupted across his burning flesh. 10 years ago, he fought a rabid rogue in a snowy forest to protect his sister. The rogue tore his throat. It almost ended his life. He learned a bloody truth in the red snow. Survival requires you to become a darker monster than the one you fight. A Roman's jaws snapped shut with the force of a steel bear trap. A barrage of hot silver bullets cut through the thick smoke. The burning metal grazed his ribs. The pain spiked like 100 hot needles piercing his organs. He did not retreat a single inch. Roman unleashed a deafening, earth-shattering roar. He lunged. He became a blur of dark fur and unstoppable fury. He broke their riot shields. He shattered their silver weapons. He tore their courage to shreds. The copper stench of fresh blood mixed with the harsh tear gas. A terrified cop dropped a smoking shotgun. He ran for the exit. Roman let the coward flee. He only wanted the head of the snake. Where was Vance hiding in this burning building? Who guarded his missing nephew while Vance played this game? The unanswered questions fueled his feral fire. Roman's liquid gold eyes locked onto the steel door of the interrogation wing. He stalked through the crying, defeated tactical squad. His blood-slicked paws left dark red prints on the gray tile. He was no longer a billionaire CEO. He was no longer a polished syndicate boss. He was an apex predator coming to claim his mate. He lowered his massive head, a low, vibrating growl shaking the plaster from the walls.
Inside the tiny interrogation room, the blaring fire alarms masked the sounds of the slaughter outside. The harsh, blinking red strobe lights painted the concrete walls the color of fresh blood. The steel door warped inward with a terrifying boom. Harper stumbled backward. She covered her ringing ears. Detective Vance drew a silver pistol from his shoulder holster. His hands shook, his arrogant face drained of all color. He finally realized he poked a sleeping dragon. The steel door ripped off its iron hinges. It flew across the room. It smashed into the concrete wall. Thick, blinding white smoke rolled into the small space. A terrifying beast stepped slowly through the shattered doorway. It was the size of a large truck. Midnight black fur dripped with fresh red blood and white plaster dust. Razor-sharp claws gouged deep tracks into the solid concrete floor. The eyes made Harper's breath catch in her throat. They burned bright gold, filled with uncontrollable murder. Vance aimed his shaking gun at the monster's head. "Shoot it!" he screamed blindly into the smoke. Years ago, Harper stood over her dying mother in a cold hospital room. She felt entirely helpless against a disease she could not fight. She promised herself she would never be a passive victim again. True resilience does not mean you never feel fear. It means you look the nightmare in the eyes and refuse to blink. Harper did not cower in the corner. The black wolf lunged toward Vance. Its huge jaws opened wide. It prepared to decapitate the corrupt detective in a single bite. The beast was completely feral. It was lost to the bloodlust. The corrupt justice system failed her. She chose to save the monster instead. Her body moved on pure instinct. Roman, no. Harper threw her fragile body between the beast and the terrified cop. Heat radiated off the giant wolf like a raging bonfire. The wolf did not stop immediately. It crashed into her. The impact knocked her hard against the metal table. Her lungs burned. Her ears rang loudly. Plaster dust settled over her shoulders. Harper reached out her shaking, bruised hands. She did not hold a wrench. She did not hold a bleach rag. She pressed her bare palms against the thick, blood-slicked fur of his chest. The giant wolf froze. His chest heaved against her small hands. A terrifying growl rattled deep inside his ribcage. He snapped his bloody jaws inches from her face. She did not flinch. She stroked his coarse fur. She offered the raw anchor his fractured soul desperately needed. "I'm right here," she whispered. "You found me." The feral, golden fire in his eyes began to flicker. The lethal beast listened to his brave mate, but Vance still gripped a loaded silver gun just 2 feet away. A loud click echoed from the hammer of the pistol. Inside the shattered interrogation room, the ceiling sprinklers suddenly burst open. Freezing water rained down through the smoke. The downpour soaked the plaster dust. It washed the blood from the grey tile. It soaked through Harper's thin clothes. Vance backed against the far wall. His hands shook violently. He pointed his silver pistol directly at Roman's furry skull. The corrupt detective was cornered like a rat in a flooded basement. "Step aside, Mop." Vance screamed. But blind panic cracked his voice. Harper did not move. She pressed her cheek against the giant wolf's wet chest. She did not flinch from the fangs. She did not hide from the gun. She anchored her boots to the slippery floor. She understood loyalty now. She refused to retreat a single inch. When she was a teenager, she found a stray fighting dog in an alley. She fed its scraps. She cleaned its wounds. She earned its fragile trust. She learned a quiet truth back then. Broken things bite the hardest, but they love the deepest. Roman was not just a monster. He was a scarred protector. Vance cocked the hammer of his weapon. Roman made his choice. The feral fire in his golden eyes vanished. The beast did not lunge at the terrified cop. Instead, Roman wrapped his front paws carefully around Harper's waist. He curled his broad frame around her small shoulders. He became a living shield against the incoming silver bullet. He chose her survival over his own revenge. A sharp gunshot cracked from the hallway. Vance cried out. Blood exploded from his right shoulder. He dropped his silver pistol. It clattered against the wet tile. The trap broke. Syndicate guards rushed through the ruined doorway. They lowered their smoking rifles. They aimed the muzzles directly at the bleeding detective. The perimeter was secure. Harper exhaled a shaky breath, her fingers still buried deep in wet fur.
Under the freezing rain of the sprinklers, Roman's bones began to snap. The brutal shift back to human form tore through his muscles. He dropped to his knees on the flooded floor. He was bare, shivering, and covered in his own warm blood. He stood up tall. He needed to end this war permanently. A loyal guard stepped forward. He handed Roman a dry black trench coat. Roman snatched the heavy fabric. He swung it over his broad shoulders. He tied the belt tight around his waist. Vance clutched his bleeding shoulder. He writhed on the wet tile. "It's over," Vance sobbed. "My team locked down your shipping port." "The port was a distraction," Roman stated flatly. While the police raided the club, Roman's elite enforcers breached Vance's safe house. "My nephew is safe," Roman growled. The low vibration carried over the hissing sprinklers. "And your mole from the Obsidian Club is bleeding out inside a car trunk." Vance's corrupt empire turned to dust before his eyes. Years ago, Roman took control of a broken pack. His strict father offered one piece of advice on his deathbed. A true king only bows to his chosen queen. Roman built the empire. He fought the wars. He wore the crown. He finally understood the old man's words as he looked at Harper. Roman walked slowly across the room. He stopped at a broken metal desk. He picked up a steel stapler. He picked up Vance's silver police badge from the puddles. He grabbed the crying detective by his wet hair. Roman did not yell. He did not hesitate. He slammed the steel stapler down hard. He stapled the silver badge directly into the center of Vance's forehead. Vance screamed a ragged, tearing sound. Then his eyes rolled back, and he passed out cold. Roman turned his golden gaze toward the surviving police officers. They cowered in the smoke. "She is Syndicate untouchable," Roman roared. He pointed directly at his brave mate. He let his raw alpha power flood the broken room, and it pressed against the lungs of every man present. "Breathe in her direction. I will end your bloodlines." The iron chains of Harper's mob debt shattered completely. The echo of his threat faded. Roman walked back to his shaking cleaner. He reached out. He pulled her small body tight against his chest. He claimed her in the smoke. He claimed her in the blood. He claimed her in the light. She was the only human brave enough to tame his beast. He would never let her go. He buried his face in her wet hair, inhaling the sweet scent of his new queen.